This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Tuesday, August 21st, 2018. My guest is David Imel. Did I say that right, David?
Yeah, I mean, no one really knows how to say it, honestly. I don't even really know how to say it, but I just say Imel because it sounds fancier. I just go with that.
You know how to say it right. So it's David Imel.
Yes.
With Android Authority. And today we want to kind of discuss, it's kind of halfway through the year, and you know this is the time of year I'm at Burning Man, so things are hectic, and I don't have time to keep up with the news as much. So it's less news, but more kind of like evergreen content. Stuff like what's the state of phones today in 2018? Where are we at? What are the phones that are turning us on? What is the stuff we're excited about? And there's going to be a bit of news in there. There's a couple of news items I found that are interesting. And of course, the Note 9 reviews just came out this week, so we have to talk about the Note 9 again, folks. So yeah, David, welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a while since we've done this. I think last time was Sony.
No, it was, we were in New York together for... Wait, was it for
I think that was for
the Huawei party for the holidays?
Oh, was it that? I was thinking it was the XZ2 Sony announcement.
No, it wasn't the XZ2 because I didn't go to that.
Yeah, I did go to that Huawei party, so it might have been that.
I think it was that. Anyway, so you just reviewed the Note 9 for Android Authority.
Yes.
And I still am waiting for my review unit. Damn. And if you're listening, Samsung folks at Allison PR, etc., please get in touch with me. I've pinged you. It's been almost 2 weeks now since this phone has landed. So what's your take? I mean, I read your review, obviously, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings about this phone. I really like it. Surprisingly, I've never really been a huge fan or someone who wanted to, thought that the S Pen was like the end all accessory for a phone. But overall, I think the improvements that Samsung made are really, really good. Like they really took feedback from consumers based on the Note 8 and they just kind of refined everything. And I think that's what everyone is really saying with this phone is the Note 9 is probably the best refinement we've seen so far. In fact, the title of my review is Refinement at its Best. So if, for example, there's kind of like contour, the edges are more contoured now. They're less curvy and a little more flat. The sides are flatter, so it's easier to hold the phone without, dropping it and having it slip out of your hand. They've refined the S Pen. They added Bluetooth functionality to it, which is really kind of an interesting add. Bluetooth can be used for a remote shutter. It can be used to pause and play music. And app developers can actually develop specifically for the S Pen if they want to, but that's really up to them. So,
it's interesting because I was telling Rich this on the podcast last week, and I actually suggested that to Samsung last year with the Note 8. I said, folks, you need to go Bluetooth on the S Pen. Although the implementation of it is much smarter than I thought. What I was thinking in my head, I was just thinking a tiny little watch battery in there that would last like a year or two. But they did an ultra capacitor that gets charged wirelessly. I suggested them, I said, you need Bluetooth on there for three things. I said, you need Bluetooth as a camera trigger. You need Bluetooth for to use it like a tile tag, like a Bluetooth locator tracker. So imagine you throw the pen in your wallet, your pen in your bag or whatever, like as a kind of like you don't have a tracker, but you need one. Like you're in a situation where security becomes critical. You're not going to use your S Pen for a bit. You stick it in somewhere, and you have a proximity tag.
I would absolutely love that if they.
And then they didn't do that. But the third thing is also something they did that I suggested, which is they went ahead and did the remote for presentations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same deal. The button is there and it can be used for different things. So kudos to them for, I'm sure that it wasn't my idea that's swinging them over, but I did suggest it and I feel like they executed on most of it. So it's kind of awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's really good so far. It's just pretty interesting. It's like, it's one of those things that I think is convenient. It's not a deal breaker for me. It's not like, oh my gosh, I can use my pen as a remote shutter now and my life has changed. But it's just a little basic thing that's like, oh, that's kind of useful. Because before the S Pen was like, I mean, I like to use it for screenshotting to like pick parts of the screen versus taking a whole screenshot. I like to write on the screen sometimes if I'm trying to highlight an area and send it. I wrote in my review, it's like, the S Pen is really good for information transfer. If you're trying to specifically pinpoint a certain part of a page that you want to show someone, if you want to circle something or send a little snippet of something, that's what I really like it for. They have like the whole live message thing, but that's not really my bread and butter. But I mean, other than the S Pen, honestly, like the 4,000 milliamp hour battery is killer. I got about 7 hours of screen on time out of this phone, like on regular usage, which is awesome. It's like, and that was a heavy day of usage. If I was sitting in front of my computer most of the day, I could probably easily get 2 entire days out of this phone.
I mean, that's a huge surprise to me that they went. I mean, so the Galaxy S9 Plus is what, 3,500, right? Or 33? What is it?
S9 Plus. Let me see. It's something. I think it's 33.
We have to Google it.
I think it's 33.
I think it's somewhere around there, right? So that's a pretty big improvement. And there's only very few phones right now with that level of battery life.
The Razer phone has 4,000.
Of course, the P20 Pro is the first one that comes to my mind. But, I mean, this is exciting considering, this has been a bit of an issue for them in the past, the whole battery and fiery thing. That they actually went ahead with this, and well, we'll see what happens. But I'm sure.
Yeah, it was a big.
They've learned this lesson.
It was a big marketing thing for them because I think they're just still trying to redeem that whole Note 7 thing. I mean, the Note 8 they actually had a smaller battery capacity than the Note 7, and that was them. That was them playing it hyper safe to try to save face for the whole from the whole Note 7 thing. But it's really good to see that they're comfortable enough now that they're very, very positive. We do enough testing. They've obviously learned their lesson, and it's very obvious to consumers that, that's the most important thing for consumers is battery life.
Absolutely.
We ran a poll on the site last week asking what the favorite new feature or best spec bump was of the Note 8, and it was overwhelmingly, I think about 49% was the new battery. So, your phone's just a paperweight if it's dead. So
yeah, for sure. So, I mean, obviously the S Pen with its new Bluetooth features, the fact that the blue phone gets a yellow S Pen, which is really kind of cool, with a matching yellow ink on the lock screen when you want to take notes, which I think is also really cool. The battery, 4,000 milliamp hours, you still have the headphone jack, still have basically everything you have in a Galaxy S9 Plus, the dual aperture, dual camera system, dual OIS, the really great f1.7 front-facing camera, and more RAM and more storage as an option. 8 gigs and 512. 512 is just insane to me.
Yeah.
And you can add micro SD on top of that. So all around, this is really lovely, and you can retain IP68 compatibility, including the S Pen, which is also blows my mind. But here's the question: the screen is bigger than the S9 Plus by 0.2 inches, right?
It's 0.2 now. It's 6.4. Last year, it was 6.3. The bezels are a little bit smaller, so now it's 6.4.
So here's the question: all this is lovely. And you can still choose between the S9 Plus and the Note 9. And now you know why you're picking one or the other. Battery life, S Pen, bigger screen, more storage and RAM on some versions. But the price, holy crap balls, right?
So we're looking at $1,000 and $1,250. And, everyone was freaking out when the iPhone 10 came out with that price. But it's kind of becoming normalized, and I guess Apple is good at normalizing crazy things. But in whatever case, I mean, you are getting literally the best specs that you can get on an Android phone if you kind of exclude the Asus ROG phone that has an overclocked 845. But besides that, I mean, you're getting everything. And something I really want to highlight here, and that I was really obvious in my review, was this phone is the biggest FU to every other manufacturer that took out the headphone jack, because not only do they have room for a headphone jack, they have room for an S Pen, which is about 3/4 of the length of the entire phone.
Yeah.
And they can still fit a 4,000 milliamp hour battery in there. So, like, what excuse does anyone have anymore, you know?
Well, I'm really, again, it's everything in the kitchen sink spec wise. And that's kudos to Samsung for that. I still think it's a tough sell. I mean, look, I'll be frank with you. All this is exciting, but I'm not an S Pen user. I'm not going to become an S Pen user this year because of the Note 9 having a Bluetooth S Pen.
Totally.
And I can't seem, if I was the average consumer, I mean, it's hard to justify that price difference. I mean, the S9 Plus comes with 6 gigs of RAM and I think 128 of storage, right?
At least they have versions. A 256 option now.
And so you're talking about the same amount of like, you're talking like $300-$400 less probably on contract
especially now that the S9 is relatively old. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. You're really just getting the better battery life, slightly bigger screen, and the S Pen. And like it, the Note 9 now has the dual aperture camera. It's just the same phone with some power user features like extra storage if you want it, extra RAM if you want it. And I mean, the screen is slightly better. The screen was actually display. Who was it? Was it DisplayMate? Yeah, DisplayMate did a bunch of testing and found that it actually has the best AMOLED display ever in an Android smartphone.
Yeah, and actually it was like that with the Note 8. It was brighter last year than the Galaxy S8. So I mean, look, the reality is, of course, you're going to get this is the best of the best Samsung can do. I'm not doubting that. I still think like $1,000 is like, wow.
It's interesting because in retrospect, our phones really are just straight up computers, and people pay, what Samsung's trying to charge basically effectively $800 for the Galaxy Tab S4, which don't buy that if you have the chance. It's just bad. But anyway, if people are going to spend that much money on laptops, and I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here too, because I honestly think like $1,000 for a phone is kind of ridiculous. But at the same time, your phone is the computer that you use more than any of your other computers, right?
Right,
like,
right, of
way
course.
more, like 90 times more a day, and it can do almost all the same things, but the only things it can't really do are the same level of like video editing or, maybe gaming, but they're trying to fix that with DeX, which still isn't great, but,
They changed it though. Now you don't need a dock. You can just plug a cable in, right?
So now you just need to use a micro HDMI to USB-C cable, and you can actually use the phone as a trackpad, which is pretty cool.
Which is, I think, something that Huawei did with the Mate 10 Pro last year first. So, yeah, I mean, great, but okay, like, you should have done that originally. I mean, the DeX dock is kind of a bit of a dick move, if you ask me, because you have to buy it.
I mean...
At least they listened. Look, this is the thing about Samsung. You have to give them credit for listening. Like, they listened back in the day when we complained that we wanted the SD card back in the Galaxy S7. It was missing, right? So they put it back. And, look, can't complain about that. So, like, I'm excited. I think it's definitely one of the best phones you can buy. Or the spec-wise, definitely the most complete spec sheet you can get. But, again, it's a lot of money, and... the kind of people who are going to buy a Note are the kind of people who probably are going to buy a phone every year. Like most Note users that I know are like hardcore. They want their S Pen at all costs. They're going to buy a new Note every year. And that's why I think, like even if it had been $950 or $900, and then, I think $250 more for the 512 seems insane to me. It's only, it's memory.
I know. Memory is cheap now, right? And it's there. That's why they're giving you quadruple, is because it's the whole thing that Apple did back in the day with the iPods, where they only offered one version and then 4 times. It wasn't a 2x overhaul. It was a 4x overhaul, and so that way people are like, oh my gosh, I have to get the bigger one because it's just a bad deal if I buy the smaller one. Even though they're making more money. But
think about it though. I mean, you're talking about the like a Note 9 base, $1,000 plus a Moto G6 backup phone.
True. And the Moto G6 is one of the cheapest.
If you put it that way, right, phones. It starts becoming one of those like, what the F?
And I mean, the fact that they were like, you can add a micro SD card and get a terabyte of storage. It's like, well, yeah, but you can also add a micro SD card to the 128 version and get 750 gigs of storage. So
I know, right? Jeez. Yeah. I mean, like, okay, it's cool, but I have issues. I had issues with the iPhone 10 pricing too. Don't get me wrong. This is not like just it's a little easier to swallow with Apple because they're going to be doing it. And then Samsung, I'm just like, I find it counterintuitive. The S9 hasn't been a great seller as well as they hoped, because in many ways it's very evolutionary over the S8. And I think that the Note, in many ways, unless you start digging into the specs and seeing the battery life, for example, it is also very evolutionary over the Note 8, the Note 9, right? So I think that's why I have a problem with this price. It's like, I don't think Samsung's in a position to ask that price.
Right. And,
if they are worried about losing, people's, like, if they want it to be a successful product, I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't think they have any like killer features here. They're really touting that battery change, and that's their big marketing play, and it is working. I mean, people they want and need a bigger battery, right? But at the same time,
everybody does.
Like when the S9 is now this old and you can get it, there's so many deals for it out there. You can get it for so cheap now, and so like, really, what are you getting? And I don't think that the pen is worth it to pay $1,000.
No, it never was, honestly, the price worth the price premium for me. I mean, for some people it's essential. I get it. I'm just saying, like, for me it's never been something that I need.
No, same. I agree, definitely.
So, quick question. I want to kind of segue into the main topic here, which was we want to kind of do a state of the union of phones for the middle of 2018, the summer. Yeah. So would you pick the Note 9 in your top 5, or would you pick the Galaxy S9 Plus in your top 5?
In top, does that have to include price? Like,
No, this is your top 5 regardless of what. Like, this is not your top 5 for value. This is not your top 5 for performance. This is like, if you had to pick 5 phones that you feel are the outstanding champions of 2018, these would be phones that have been launched in 2018. They can't really be phones from last year. What would be the, and maybe you'll have both in your list. I don't know. But by saying, like, if you had to pick one, which one would you pick?
I would pick the Note 9. Yeah.
Okay.
I would. I would pick it over the Note 8 if like battery life was not price was not a factor.
But if price is a factor, and because everything is a factor.
Honestly,
performance.
If price was a factor, then I wouldn't put any phone over like $600 in my list because the OnePlus 6 exists. That's my biggest problem right now is it's hard for me to recommend any phone.
Yeah, the OnePlus 6 is just killing it.
It is.
Right?
It's just like OnePlus 6 is hands down my favorite phone of 2018 because
there you go.
They always do that with price. They always make an amazing phone at an amazing price. And this year, I think they really just killed it. They just nailed. There are small things about the size of the notch, the size of the bezel that they have, just the overall feel of the device, the quality that they're able to put in at that price, the quality of their glass, the ability to make every color a slightly different feel. They just really nailed it this year. I
agree 100%. I think they finally delivered on the promise of what OnePlus has been marketing. They never did for me. Like, I think the OnePlus 1 was definitely up there in the early days, and then the OnePlus 2 was very disappointing. I thought the OnePlus 3 was back up there as like this is it. And then the 3T, of course, updates the 3. The 5 was a complete letdown for me comparatively. The 5T was an improvement, but too little, too late. And the 6 really nails it. The 6 is the first OnePlus where I really feel I'm not sacrificing in imaging performance, which is a tall order in these days. I mean, it's still not as good as the best of the best, but it's competitive at least now.
Definitely, especially at its price
and
point.
absolutely. So So definitely the OnePlus 6 is in my top 5 as well. So you pick the OnePlus 6 in top 5. I pick the OnePlus 6 in my top 5. Maybe let's rank them at the end, okay?
Sure.
Let's pick the phones right now. So you said the Note 9 is one of them, and I will pick the Galaxy S9 Plus as mine because I really feel that it's a much better choice. It's also, I think, a more manageable phone in size. There's a bunch of reasons. And of course, the fact that you can probably get a pretty damn good deal on it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My only thing is I don't really like when phones are that curvy. They slip out of my hand really easily.
Yeah, it is a little rounder for sure.
So I like that the Note 9 kind of added more flat sides. It's a lot easier to grip. So that's a big thing for me aesthetically.
So if you have to pick another phone that you would put on your top 5 list, what would that be?
LG G7 would be there.
Me too. I agree 100%. The wide angle lens, the audio quality with that quad HD DAC, whatever it's quad DAC.
Yeah. They did.
Yeah, those two things are killer.
This is another phone that I just feel did everything, and it's so under the radar. It's so underrated. It didn't get that much press. When we actually reviewed it, there wasn't a lot of buzz over it. But it's a big thing for me. I recently started using the iPhone 10 as a secondary phone, just be able to really compare like Android phones to like what the best of what Apple's doing. And no one can touch Apple when it comes to haptics. I'm a very, very tactile person. The feel of a haptic, the feel of a body, really like it's important to me. And no one can do it like Apple can. But LG is the closest thing you can get in the Android space. The G7 is the absolute closest you can get in haptics. I mean, it does a really good job. It's not nearly, where the iPhone 10's at, but for me, it's big. It's got the headphone jack, it's water resistant. It's got the quad DAC. It's really got everything. And
I agree with you. I agree on the vibration motor too. I think the Pixel 2 XL is pretty damn good too because it's made by LG. You can tell that it's not as good as a G7, but it's up there too.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what's interesting? As an aside, I talked about this on the podcast last week, so I kind of want to update folks a little bit who are listening. We talked with Rich about the Honor 10, and I finally got a review unit, the European sub €500 phone. So it's actually about $466 I think, is at the present rate. It's pretty much they took the P20 formula, not the Pro, but I put it in a cheaper
the Honor
phone
body.
But spec-wise, the Honor 10. And spec-wise, it's awesome. I don't know if you had a chance to play with it.
I actually have not gotten a chance to use it so far, but I know that our review had a very positive outlook of that phone, especially at the price point.
Yeah, my gripe on that was that it's a great phone. It's basically a copy of the P20 in a cheaper package. But the two things I don't like about it is the fingerprint reader is almost impossible to use because it's an ultrasonic fingerprint reader and it has so much like false positives or false negatives. I mean, it just doesn't register for me every time, which gets very frustrating. I've fast.
Actually swinging it just as an aside back to the Note 9 is that they moved the fingerprint reader below the camera and they rotated it 90 degrees. And so now instead of putting your index finger like in a vertical orientation, it's horizontal, but it's the same size. And I've been getting a lot of false negatives on that as well. I think a reason has to be how quick their registration is. You literally just slide your finger down once and it registers your finger, which is awesome. Right. Which is awesome that they can do that and you don't have to, jump your finger around the sensor forever. But it's been pretty inconsistent. And, I would rather that they made it a little bigger. So anyway.
Yeah, so that's one gripe I have with the Honor 10. It's really finicky, like finicky to the point where you don't want to use it. Thankfully, it has really good facial recognition. Yeah. But the other thing is that I haven't mentioned yet, and this G7 discussion from LG brought me to this topic, is the vibration motor on the Honor 10 feels like a cheap Alcatel phone. If you know what I'm saying, do you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
have you used a cheap Alcatel phone?
Yeah,
it feels like this terrible, terrible vibration motor. It's like, ooh.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain
No,
it.
I feel you.
It's
Like so important to
bad.
me.
And so the Honor 10 is not going to be a phone. Let me tell you that. Because you will not. It's so bad for the vibration motor. Anyway, so back to the G7. I think the G7 absolutely deserves to be in that top 5 because it's just so dope.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I totally agree.
So good. So what's the next one?
There's a phone that I've been wanting to get the chance to play with that I still haven't. But there's a new phone by Xiaomi there's a new line by Xiaomi, and it's called the Pocophone. And it basically is trying to compete with OnePlus on an even more hardcore level.
Yeah, they just announced
it was just
right?
announced last week. So essentially, it's a small phone. It's made of, what's that? There's like this carbon fiber material that Motorola originally used on some of the older Droid phones. I can't remember what it was called. Kevlar.
Kevlar,
Yeah, so it's
yes.
made of like this Kevlar material, so it feels really great. It's not plastic, so I mean it's not metal, which is like whatever. Or glass. I don't really care about that, but I think it feels good. But it's a pretty small phone. It's like 5.2 inches or something, 5.3. It's got a Snapdragon 845. It has like 6 gigs of RAM, and it's $300.
What's the name of it?
It's called the Pocophone by Xiaomi.
Pogo F1,
Yes.
right?
And so Joshua Vergara, close friend of mine and former colleague, had this phone with him when we were hanging out in New York, and so I got to spend we never turned it on, but just the feel in the body, like ooh, it feels good. And Xiaomi has impressed me time and time again this year. I got to spend some time with the Mi 8 Explorer Edition, which, there was a lot of controversy over that phone. But even in the brief, 2 hours that I got to spend with that phone, I loved it. And I think that Xiaomi is doing this thing where they offer, just as good, if not specs, build quality as everyone else, but at half the price. In the Mi 8 is doing the same thing as OnePlus, and now they want to go even deeper with this Poco phone. So yeah.
For me, the big issue with Xiaomi has been their UI, the UX, the software.
Yeah.
I had a Xiaomi Mix 2, a Mi Mix 2. And it's a phenomenal piece of hardware, but the software is kind of
that's definitely.
So I'm wondering if this Pogo thing, this new line, if it's going to be like OnePlus, if they're going to go for a pure Android experience.
Well, it's interesting because they're finally pushing into other markets. I believe it's now available in some parts of Europe. And the fact that, they did the Mi A2 by Xiaomi is an Android One phone.
I had the A1,
yeah.
so I know I played with that.
Yeah, so the A2 actually has a really great camera, and Android One is basically stock Android. So
right, absolutely. So let's hope that they wisen up on that.
We can hope that they'll push that into their other devices.
But so is this phone? This phone exists, right? You played with it, so it's real.
It's real.
So you could put it in your top 5.
Yeah, I don't want to crown it as a top 5 phone, so I just wanted to talk about it really bad.
Okay,
just
great.
Just because I haven't used it, but at $300 for a Snapdragon 845, it's like, what are you doing? Who can even compete with that? Yeah,
I mean it's tough, right? I mean, there's very little in that realm right now. So yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. So let's see. We got what was your number 4 then?
It was the G7. So
G7. So now you need a 5th one. It doesn't have to be. No. We did OnePlus 6, Note 9.
Oh yeah, G7.
G7. So number 4 is. I mean, it's not the order. We're not talking about the order. This is 5 phones you've picked.
Right.
And then well, maybe I will assign them.
Gosh,
in order.
I'm trying to think of what's been released this year, because I reviewed the Sony Xperia XA2, and I really did not like that phone very much. So
for me, I'll tell you what mine is.
Go for it.
The P20 Pro.
Ooh, yeah.
Huawei.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the best phones I've used this year. The camera is absolutely insane.
I have not gotten a chance to use the P20 Pro at all.
You need to get your hands on one, especially now that they fixed a lot of the early kind of growing pains of the camera when it was over sharpening and kind of over processing. It's all gone now.
Yeah.
It's I mean, it's got a special flavor. You can tell you're using sometimes a P20 Pro in what you see in the images. But honestly, it nails so much stuff so often, so right. That for me, it's really a toss between that and the Pixel 2 XL in terms of the best camera this year. You know, a lot of people are like, yeah, but the Pixel is just, you know, sure value. But you still have so much more light gathering capability with the P20 Pro. That night mode that auto stabilizes is insane. Nobody's done that yet. The 3 times optical zoom is another one that you know that just can't be touched. There's so much good there. And it's a great phone all around. The software isn't too bad. It's probably the most light-handed Huawei software to date. So, you know, can't go wrong on this one, in my opinion.
Yeah, not overkill too much. Yeah, I really need to spend some time with that phone. I know Narav has spent like a really long time with that phone. I think he's used it since day one.
He destroyed his recently.
Yeah, he dropped it in the river, so he bought another one.
But it's IP68. It should have survived, especially
it should have,
not salty water. It's weird.
It is weird because it wasn't even that deep and for very long. So I don't know. It's kind of bad.
Weird.
Yeah.
Maybe he's dropped it too many times and had a crack somewhere.
That's possible. I dropped my Note 8 my Note 9 a couple times already, and it's got a couple bumps. But
So what would you pick as a number 4? Maybe.
Gosh, what else have I reviewed?
It's tough, huh?
It's tough because I feel, I don't know, I just love the OnePlus 6 so much and the LG G7 so much. It's hard to think of other things that have really stood out.
So you got a Samsung phone, you got an LG phone, you got a OnePlus phone.
You know, I'm excited for the Pixel 3 phones.
Yeah, but it's not here
yet, so I can't talk about that.
Of course I'm excited too, except for that ridiculous notch.
Yeah, I know. It looks crazy.
Man, that looks crazy. But it looks like it has a good potential to have a true Face ID-like scanner in there. Supported by Google out of the box. You can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. Speaking of, I just want to say that for me, so you still haven't picked a 4th place, but I picked the P20 Pro. For me, I want to bring up a potential 4th place that you might want that I have to kind of think twice about, and that's the Oppo Find X.
Oh yes, for some reason those phones completely slipped my mind. Yeah, I mean this year has definitely been the year of, you know, Chinese manufacturers just totally killing it. And Oppo and Vivo both made some pretty, you know, which are both obviously owned by BBK, just like OnePlus. I guess just BBK is killing it this year.
Yeah, that's right. They really are.
The Find X, I got to review that too, and that phone was sick. The software was totally horrible, and it was definitely made for a Chinese market that, you know, I don't personally understand, but it makes more sense for them than it does for us, I guess. But
absolutely. I mean, it's until it gets like an Indian version or for the Indian market or European version or like a rest of Asia version that's not China. I'm gonna not be able to pick that in my top 5. I want to so bad. The reason I bring it up is because talking about a true Face ID competing face unlock. Obviously, the Oppo Find X is using some sort of time of flight dot array projector or grid projector. It's super fast. And it works in the dark. I mean, it's definitely up there with Face ID. The thing is, because this phone isn't a Chinese phone, we don't know if you can do payments and authenticate with your face.
No fingerprint
which, as you know, no Android phone can do yet. So the big question to me is, will the Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL, if they have such a Face ID competing technology, will they be able to use that Face ID for payment like the iPhone 10
I think they will.
That's what I want to see.
You know, object recognition and like person recognition is what Google does probably better than anyone. Like Google Photos can, you know, identify people immediately, can identify objects immediately, and I think especially seeing the size of the notch and how big the front-facing cameras are on the 3XL, at least provided by the leaks, I'm pretty certain that they're going to have such a high level of confidence on, you know, the person that it's actually taking an image of, that they'll be able to like solidly be able to do payments, which is awesome. Because to be honest, like I said, I've been using the the iPhone 10 as a secondary recently, and being able to download apps with Face ID is so cool. It's so good.
I know, it's total baller.
It's so
yeah,
good.
I know.
Yeah, so I really hope they do that. The Oppo Find X, wow, that was a cool phone, and I loved using that, and it was really interesting and new and innovative. And, there's always the whole thing about moving parts, but you got to at least give BBK, they tried, and I'm really glad they did, because it's going to move forward the entire market for bezel-less phones.
Yeah, and I played with Michael Fisher's when I was in Chicago for the Moto Z3 and 5G mod announcement, and I used it for a whole day, and I have to say that mechanism gave me a lot more confidence in its reliability and durability than I thought initially.
Yeah, both the Find X and the Vivo Nex, both their moving parts, you can tell that they put a ton of engineering effort into making sure that those were going to be really reliable. We actually did like a ton of drop tests on the Vivo Nex, and it sustains with the camera popped out. And they've got a bunch of little tricks to make sure that you don't like try to break it. Like, if you if you hold down your finger really hard on top of it while it's trying to open up, it'll just like stop, and it won't.
Yeah, same with the Oppo Find X, and same if you try to close it. I mean, look, I don't think that should stop you from buying that phone if and when Oppo comes out with a revised, more friendly to us Android users in the West software stack. I'm looking forward to that phone, really am. I've talked to their PR folks, and they seem very aware of the negative reviews it has received for software. And they basically told me that they will get me a review in it, but they want to get the software right in their own words. So they're clearly working on something that's more digestible for our markets, which I'm really looking forward to.
I mean, it's coming out in European markets, or did it already come out there, or is it coming?
I don't think it's out yet. No. Yeah. I'd be surprised if it was.
I'm really interested in what the software looks like by the time it comes out for European markets, because I mean, both Michael Fisher and I, we were chatting on Facebook Messenger about the Find X when he got it, and we were just like railing about the software because like I'm sure that that's just what software looks like in China, and everyone is used to that, and it works there, but it just doesn't work here. It just straight up does not work here.
It's really a bad experience.
It's really bad.
It's really, really bad. So
yeah. I'd probably put the Mi 8 as my like reluctant number 5. I really like that phone. The software, like you said, it still needs work.
So the Oppo Find X is your number 4 then?
I'd put it in there. Yeah, I'd say 4 and 5 are in no really particular order, because I still wouldn't really necessarily use them.
Well, we haven't ordered them anyway. It's just more like what are the 5 phones that are defining the year? And I think for me, the Oppo Find X is up there. I think my number 5 is probably well, it's probably the Oppo Find X. I mean, I just said the P20 Pro was my number 4, so yeah. I think that, or since it's not technically available with software that we can use, I would my fallback would be the Moto G6.
Yeah, that is,
because for $250, you're pretty much getting 90% of the X4 last year.
It's crazy because there are so many Motorola phones now, like there are way too many, but the G6 just sticks out as being like a killer option. Like everyone has written really crazy good things about it, especially for the price. It's so good. So
yeah, it's so good. I agree. So of course, at the end of the year, we'll revisit this list, and I bet you my Pixel 3 XL will be which will be my daily driver by then. Hopefully, it might be in my top 5 as well. There's a lot of questions around that phone with that lots of leaks and rumors, and the notch looks pretty large, taller than it should be, really. And of course, there's a lot of chin, and 4 gigs of RAM is the rumor. 4 gigs of RAM is really worrying me, because
that worries me too.
When the Nexus 5, what was it, the 5X, right, came out? It had 2 gigs of RAM, remember, and it was under RAM back then, and we were all like, "Oh, this is a pain." So I'm kind of hoping that's not true, or maybe there's a version with 6 gigabytes. We'll see how it goes. But I'm sure the Pixel 3 XL is going to be a great phone.
Yeah.
Google would be stupid to mess this
Yeah.
up. So, other than that, I'm not anticipating too much coming out that's going to be blowing my mind and changing this list too much,
Yeah,
frankly.
I mean, there's going to be
maybe the V40. There'll be the LG V40, probably.
That would be sweet.
But
The Huawei Mate 20. Yes. The
Pro?
Mate 20 Pro.
And Mate 20.
I'm pretty stoked for that because they do some crazy things when they release new flagships. So
Yeah, the Mate is always an exciting part of their portfolio too, but that's later in the year. So these are only the only. There's a very few phones that could dislodge. And honestly, if the Mate 20 is better than a P20 Pro, for me, it would dislodge a P20 Pro.
Yeah.
And right now, if I had to pick my, the Oppo Find X might still be in my list if they release a version that I can use in the West, but
Yeah.
I might drop that for for something else like maybe. Whatever else comes along. But the G6, the Moto G6 that I picked, might be the one I would bump out for the Pixel 3 XL, for example.
Yeah.
So the top, the Galaxy, one of the Galaxies is still going to be on that list. One of the LG phones is still going to be in that list. And the OnePlus 6 is absolutely going to remain on that list, especially if they give us a 6T.
6T should be November.
That's going to be just an updated version in some way or another, right?
I really think they might, a lot of rumors are saying that it's just going to be a smaller notch, but I kind of think that they're going to completely remove the notch and go for the moving part thing. Because, I think OnePlus...
Oh my God, if they do that. I don't know if they can do that for $500. So.
I mean, they've done crazier things before. It's possible.
Yeah, hopefully they can pull it off.
Yeah.
I mean, what I would prefer to see is, IP water resistance, right?
Yeah, just the little things, right? I mean, that's kind of what you're paying for in the Note is you're paying for all the little things, and you're not getting all those little things with the OnePlus 6. So I would love to see that. I really wish they had included that in the first place, but it's possible that they just wanted to save that as a mini feature for the T. So.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would love to see moving parts, especially since BBK did the Oppo Find X
And the Vivo Nex.
And the Vivo Nex.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm kind of like, I'd rather them, give us maybe
another year for it to mature or something.
Yeah, give us a proper IP rating, and then maybe get a Snapdragon 455 in there if it's announced by then.
yeah, or the 1000 series or whatever.
Or whatever, yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we live in an interesting time. It's August and late August, and we're already at a point where, we might still have to change this list radically, which is kind of insane if you think about it.
Yeah, it's crazy
right?
because we're almost to Q4 and there's still so many crazy flagships coming out by the end of the year. So here's a question for you. Now that we've picked more or less our 5 phones that we feel are worthy for 2018, at least for the first 8 months, how would you rank them? From one.
What's your number 1
to 5?
Yeah. That's tough, right?
It's tough, but I would say OnePlus 6 is my number 1. Honestly, there is something about the feeling of the phone in the hand. They got the size really, really, really right.
Yeah, it's really dope. Yeah.
I would put LG G7 immediately after that. I think that it's also super dope and underrated. Didn't get enough media attention. After that, I would probably put the Note 9. Really like this phone a lot. My review is out now, and it's just it feels really good. It's definitely kind of they helped define the entire phablet category, and they changed the way that smartphones are sized completely. And it doesn't feel huge, which is kind of weird because the original Note felt enormous and this doesn't. So and then I think I'd put the Oppo Find X after that because I think it's just so revolutionary, and also the colors of the Find X are really sick.
Yeah, they're really hot.
Both the blue and the purple.
It photographs worse than it looks in person, I think.
I don't know.
I mean, you can take good photos of it, but I feel like I was really, really blown away when I saw it in person, more than in the photos I'd seen until then.
You know what I hate to photograph is the Note 9, The blue of the Note 9 looks black when you photograph it straight on, and you really have to hit a specific angle to actually see the blue. Which is why totally. I like the lavender better. But regardless, yeah. And then my number 5 was the Mi 8. I'm just really stoked to see what Xiaomi does in the future, because it really seems like they're coming after OnePlus.
They need to come to the US if they want to play the game, okay? That's all I'm going to say. I'm sick and tired of this Xiaomi. Go. I mean, I can buy a P20 Pro in the US, even though, it's not officially sold here. Give me something I can buy that is not some kind of weird Chinese phone. Yeah, so I'm done with weird Chinese phones.
There are rumors that this Pogo phone might come to the US, so I think that maybe that might be their testing ground for people getting excited about Xiaomi. So
very smart.
Yeah.
I'm on board. I love Xiaomi stuff. It's just the software has never really been there for me unless you go for an Android One device. Yeah.
So, and the Mi A2 is sick. That's a really good phone too.
Sure.
Yeah.
So for me, I would say my number 1 is the OnePlus 6.
Nice.
My number 2 is the P20 Pro for the camera. Yeah. My number 3 is the G7 for the audio. And my number 4 would be the Galaxy S9 Plus for being an all-around champ.
Yeah.
And then I would end with the Moto G6 or the Find X, depending on, whether you want to count the Oppo Find X as a phone you can really use or not.
Yeah, I haven't used either the P20 or the G6, so my list may be the same as yours if I actually use them, but we unfortunately don't get to use every single phone that comes out, so... but just most of them.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the fun is about this exercise, is that, there's a lot of commonality in what we discuss as tech journalists and phone enthusiasts that review them, because the reality is, once you get almost every phone in your hands for a year that is made, at least the high end, you kind of have a pretty good feel for what's right and wrong.
Yeah, so when I reviewed the Tab S4, I know it's not exactly a phone, but it's something Samsung did. I hated it, and it made me very happy to see that my opinion was pretty much shared across the industry. I wasn't just like a hater. Like, I watched Sherilyn from Engadget's video review of it, and every word she said, I was like, oh, thank gosh, I wasn't the only one that said that. Yeah, so I think there's a commonality, like you said. We all kind of have similar opinions, but at least that there is a we all have our unique take at the same time. So.
Totally. So there you go. I hope you found this entertaining, because this was kind of the point of this podcast. Now, there's a few more news items that I want to kind of touch upon that I think are interesting pieces of news. They're technically last week's news, because I did the podcast with Rich and they were first part of the week, and then stuff came out in the second part of the week. So bear with me if you feel like it's a little old for you, but I think it's still very interesting. And one of them is that there's more leaks of this Moto phone that we until now thought was called the Moto 1 and Moto 1 Force. So maybe there's 2 variants, but now we're hearing about a Motorola P30 Play and P30 tablet or
Play, please,
whatever. I can't believe they still use that name. It's a terrible. But anyway, the point is, from the leaks, it looks identical to the Moto 1. So my question, and this is for Chinese markets, so I'm wondering if it's the same phone and it's going to be called P20 in P30, Asia thank you, P30. Oh man, I got P20 Pro in my head there. P30 in Asia, and then in China, and then maybe the Moto 1 here. And then it's going to be a series. So it's going to be a Force and non-Force and like a Play and a non-Play for the P30. Interesting. This was on Android Authority a few days ago, so I saw it, and it looks like an iPhone 10 clone, which is kind of like
the standard nowadays. Yeah.
Well, but this is really bad. Like, if you look, the flash is in between the 2 lenses in the back.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a Mi 8, which also looks like an iPhone 10. It's
That's true. The Mi 8 is a bit of an iPhone 10 ripoff. But it's interesting. I mean, look, I was a little bummed with the Moto Z3. I talked about that at length in my podcast in the last few episodes, because it's, Snapdragon 835. The price is good, but the specs, I mean, the Z series, at least the non-Play version, has always always been a flagship device in its time. It hasn't always succeeded at being a good flagship
and there's
device.
no force.
Like the Z2 Force.
There's no force.
Last year was, exactly.
Yeah.
The Z2 Force last year kind of sucked, but the Z3 this year is really just a Z2 from last year with a 18:9 display. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and I think the whole thing with the Moto mod is incredibly disappointing in my opinion because
it's a pure marketing.
Yeah, they are just railing on the hype name of 5G. And the depressing part of this is the mod doesn't even come out till 2019. 2019, first half of 2019 is when all the 5G ready phones are going to start shipping. So you're really just backing yourself into a corner with this phone. You know, you're just committing to something.
I'm not sure we're going to see these phones that early, to be honest with you. I mean, again, I don't want to go into too much of this because we've talked about it at length in the show. But the issue here is that, you know, there's two parts to 5G, millimeter wave and sub-6.
Yeah.
And, you know, no network yet has announced sub-6 support. And the only network we know who's working actively on a millimeter wave is Verizon, and I'm sure they're all working on it, but Verizon has already deployed it in some markets for home broadband replacement, right?
Yeah.
So it's real. So my point is that once you start integrating millimeter in a phone, and this is going to segue us really nicely into our next topic. Once you want to integrate millimeter into the phone, you start needing to deal with issues of form factor. Things like bezels are going to have to come back.
Yeah.
Because you need an antenna array in the front of the phone, as well as in the back and the sides. So how do you implement that, right? The 5G mod does it with a fin or stub that's sticking past the front of the device. Yeah. But so the rumor is, and this is the next news item beyond the Moto thing segued us into this obviously perfectly, but there's rumors. Well, there's not the rumors. There's an announcement by Sprint and LG, a co-announcement last week that they were going to be making a phone together that's a 5G phone on their network. And so that would mean that as far as we know right now for the US, LG might be the first to ship a 5G phone that is not just a mod or a modem basically you tack on the back of your phone. And that's exciting because I was discussing with Rose Behar 2 weeks ago who would be who do you think is going to be the first to make a 5G phone, like a fully integrated 5G phone? Mm-hmm. And we were thinking Samsung maybe, but LG somehow slipped our mind. And I think that's a good candidate because LG is in very good relationship with Qualcomm, and Qualcomm would be definitely the supplier of the chip for that because the only other option is Huawei, and we know that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think Intel has a 5G modem ready.
Oh,
so
God, no.
That means we've got Qualcomm to deal with and good, right? X50. And then, Sprint, I mean, if it still exists as a separate company by then, makes sense too, because they've always been an early adopter. They had, remember when they had their first 4G network, WiMAX? Mm-hmm. Oh,
yep.
Boy.
Yep.
So let's see what happens. But I'm just saying, like, don't be ready because of the large battery requirements and the antenna placement requirements for this phone to not meet your expectations of what a flagship looks and feels like today.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it even comes out in early 2019, I would say that it's probably more likely to be announced in, maybe Q1, but more likely Q2.
Yeah. I think that Samsung could do it. But because they're one to, just pack everything in there. And it's also going to be the Galaxy S10 or Galaxy X, whatever they call it, which is supposed to be foldable, supposed to be kind of crazy. It's going to blow people's minds or whatever. So it would kind of make sense for them to just be like, let's pull out every single stop possible. But at the same time, I think that Samsung, now that they're big enough, kind of are taking the Apple route of like, let's not really put new features into things until we feel that they've been done and they're refined, And
you know what? That's a good idea. But the thing is, because it's Samsung, doesn't stop them from making a separate phone that's not necessarily a flagship grade phone.
True, to test
but
the
like
waters.
A high-end-ish phone with 5G for a specific carrier on their specific requirements.
Yeah, and they could put it in the Note next year. The Galaxy Note X could have it, and that could be their differentiating factor. for that.
For sure.
Yeah.
But the other thing that strikes me as this this LG/Sprint announcement is that Sprint is very likely to be acquired
By T-Mobile.
At some point soon. And T-Mobile's always been super tight with LG.
Yeah.
So it would make sense for me to see an LG 5G phone on T-Mobile as a one-off device.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that happening for sure. And T-Mobile.
So let's see if the other shoe drops.
Yeah, I think Sprint always tries new things very early, but T-Mobile is very public about their opinion on pushing boundaries and breaking barriers and taking standards in the industry and just skewing them. So they, I could see, John Lazandre, or however you pronounce his last name.
Ledger. It's ledger, like a ledger of accounting.
Okay.
Ledger.
John Ledger. I could see him, going and making a huge announcement, doing this huge party. It would be cool. I don't know if they would announce it this early. I think Qualcomm likes to be the one to make those big 5G announcements because that's kind of their bread and butter. And we're definitely going to be seeing some interesting stuff in December at their Qualcomm Tech Summit. So
yeah, that is in Hawaii again this year,
Maui,
which is super
Maui
exciting.
B2.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's definitely getting real. 5G is starting to happen. It's not going to be useful and usable for most people for another 2 or 3 years because they need to roll this out in different markets. But it's happening. It's slowly happening. For me, it's going to really be happening when Sub-6 starts rolling out because millimeter really is line of sight. It's only going to work in the city, in big urban centers with picocells, either indoors, in malls and things like that, or outdoors on the street, on certain corridors, right? But Sub-6 will enable better than LTE advanced performance, even indoors in some places. So we'll see what happens. I'm curious. Yeah. It's going to be good times.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm really excited for the whole 5G revolution. But yeah, I could definitely see LG doing it, even if it's not in the flagship. I think that carriers really like to milk the 5G branding really hard because average consumers just assume that it's better than 4G. Just kind of it's exactly like they did with 4G. As even when 4G wasn't even really ready, Verizon milked the heck out of it. They were first 4G phone, HTC Thunderbolt, first 4G phone.
Oh my God, what a disaster that was. I mean, they've learned the lesson with that 5G mod has an extra battery for that. I mean, look, it's true that 5G is much more efficient than 4G ever was, but I'm just saying the early radios have always been a little bit on the heavy in terms of power consumption. So that's the other reason why if LG makes a phone with Sprint, it's kind of a lot of questions, what it's going to look like in terms of form factor because of the forward-facing millimeter wave antennas. What's it going to be like in terms of thickness? What it's going to be like in terms of battery size? And is a 5,000 milliamp hour battery going to compare with a 3,500 milliamp hour phone? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If that's where the route they go, or are they going to put in a 4,000 or 3,500 milliamp hour battery, and we're going to get a phone that is acceptable but not stellar in its battery performance? That's going to be the big question.
That's the big thing. They really need to find better battery technologies. We've been using the same stuff forever, and it just
it's improving. Battery density is getting better. For example, the Tesla Model 3, which, as I have, is got a significantly better battery density than the Model S and Model X. So it's not a huge leap forward, but it's 10 or 20% more, which I think is, for battery tech is kind of quite a bit of an improvement. So it's getting better. You keep hearing Apple every time they announce a new MacBook saying, we've more dense batteries that can, handle more cycles. There's stuff happening, but compared to the pace of innovation we're used to in chips and other areas, it seems slow because it is slow, right?
Yeah.
But it's still happening. Even if at the core it's the same technology you've been using for a decade or more.
Yeah, definitely.
First lithium-ion battery used in a device with, I believe, in either a Sony camcorder or one of Apple's early PowerBooks. And it was a big deal back then, lithium-ion battery. Whoa, amazing. No memory effect, So, gotta give it some time. It's been about 20 years, 25 years.
In that vein, just gonna plug this real quick. There's actually a really great article that I read on The Verge yesterday. It's like why or how the lithium ion battery took over our lives. It's actually not even really an article. It's like a number of stories. They kind of put together this like compilation over a long period of time of articles and just like how everything developed. So I'd recommend that. It's just called The Past, Present, and Future of Lithium Ion Batteries. And if you click on it, there's like a view all stories button. But yeah, it's good. It's good. It's kind of crazy. Just how much lithium ion has embedded itself over time. So I'm really hoping that we can soon hit another, major milestone that is like lithium ion that will eventually just become a major part of our lives. So
I saw a mention of this in their newsletter. I get The Verge's email newsletter every day. But I didn't follow through the link because I've been too busy. I'll check it out and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, sure. I'll link to you.
So anyway, I think we're at the end. I want you to take a minute to tell people where they can find you on the internet, online, in the cloud, out there.
Sure. So I'm most active on Twitter. It is my only handle that is different from all my other handles. That is not just my name. So it's Durvid Imel. It's DURVIDIMEL. And I post pretty much all my tech photography, my tech videos that I make for Android Authority on there. You can also find me on Android Authority. I post stuff on there. And what other social networks do I even use?
Instagram? Do you use it?
Yeah, I use Instagram occasionally. I post a lot of stories on there. I don't do posts very often, but my name is just my name on there. It's David Imel. So DAVIDIMEL. And I also have a website, davidemel.com. And if you want to email me, I'm hello@davidemel.com.
That's awesome. That's a great email address. Well, you know where to find me, folks. I'm Tank Girl mostly everywhere. TNKGRL, like the comic book character Tank Girl without the vowels. Because, back in the 90s, that was cool. I did it before Flickr did it, so there you go.
All over Silicon Valley now.
I know. Yeah. So, so Tank Girl on Twitter, Tank Girl on Instagram. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/Miriam Jouar. If you guys are listening to the podcast for a while, you know that this is a compliment to the show, that it has extra content like videos, unboxing, stuff that's visual that goes along with this audio podcast. So subscribe to the channel. And like the videos, it's youtube.com/Miriam Jouar. Spell out my full name, Miriam with a Y, and you'll get to that. And then, of course, the podcast here that you're listening to now, mobiletechpodcast.com. If you are listening for the first time, you can grab the RSS feed from that URL. You can also go to the Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Pocket Cast has us, of course.
Yeah, I use that.
Overcast is the one I was thinking of as well. Slacker, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio. We are everywhere. Just look for Mobile Tech Podcast, and there's generally a lot of results because those words come up a lot. But if you want to really refine the search, add Tanker on my handle, TNKGRL, to that search, and you'll definitely find me pretty much first list. So subscribe to the show if you haven't already, all that good stuff. I want to thank audible.com, my sponsor. Audible is the place to go for audiobooks. If you love audiobooks, if you want to listen to books rather than read them for whatever reason, you're commuting in the car while driving, or you're on an airplane and your eyes are tired and you want to sit back, relax, close your eyes, fall asleep, whatever, that's the best way to do it. Audiobooks from Audible. If you want to support the podcast, there's a link in the show notes, audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. Click through there to sign up for Audible if you're not already a user, and you will help the show. David, thanks so much for coming on. It was really fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, it's always fun to be on your show. I think this is the second time, and I hope to. Yeah, it's the second time, and the
first time we were in the same hotel room. It was a lot easier because we could see each other. But this works out pretty well.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Skype's given us very little latency issues this time, so that was pretty awesome.
Awesome.
All right, well, stay tuned for another show next week, folks, and enjoy the rest of your week. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.